General Boomer was Patrick's captain in Vietnam.
It's indeed an honor for me to be here. Lord Mayor, thank you for introducing all the distinguished guests so that I don't have to do that, because I probably would have messed it up. But to the Gallagher family, our distinguished guests, it's very meaningful to me to be here with you this evening. Before I begin, however, I do bring the sincere regrets of Richard Spencer, Secretary of the Navy and a good friend. He fully intended to be here tonight, but as the General and the Admirals know, it's budget time there in Washington and they're fighting over money. So the Secretary of Defense said, "You must stay here this week, Richard." But he sends his regrets. In 1966, I took command of an infantry company in Okinawa. The company had been in Vietnam, but it had returned to Okinawa for rest and refitting. It had seen considerable combat in Vietnam. I quickly learned of a Marine in my company who had been awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest award for valor in combat the United States can present to a Marine or sailor, second only to the Medal of Honor. His name was Corporal Patrick Gallagher. The medal is so rarely awarded that Patrick, whether he liked it or not, was famous. But he handled his fame with quiet dignity and professionalism. If you did not know that he was a hero, you would never have learned it from Patrick. Many of you probably know the story of why he was awarded the Navy Cross. Out on a defensive position one night, dark, scary as always, the Viet Cong infiltrated the company, and one of the enemy tossed a grenade into the midst of Patrick and his colleagues. Without hesitation, Patrick threw himself on the grenade, covering it with his body. It didn't go off. He risked his own life. A few seconds later, when all were safe, he kicked the grenade into the water nearby, and it exploded. Well, we left Okinawa, returned to Vietnam, where once again we found ourselves fighting a determined and skilled enemy. Not many weeks before he was scheduled to come home, we found ourselves in a bitter, intense fight. Gallagher was a machine gunner. Hearing the gunfire, he picked up his machine gun and ran to the fire to once again assist his fellow Marines. As he reached the fight, he was shot and killed instantly. I was at his side within minutes. We ultimately prevailed that day, but it affected us all. The loss of Patrick affected us all for the rest of our lives. Portions of my letter to Mr. and Mrs. Gallagher after his death. It is difficult for me to express the regret and sorrow felt by the Marines in this company over the death of your son. Patrick was one of the finest Marines I've ever known. His leadership, courage, uprightness, and devotion to duty were qualities that all of us respected. We will miss him greatly, and I hope you find some comfort in knowing this. I was only 27 years old at the time, and I remained in the Marine Corps until I was 55, 34 years. We celebrate the Marine Corps birthday every day on the 10th of November, or as close to it as we can. I've had the occasion to speak on more Marine Corps birthdays than I can recall. But at every single one since that time, I told and still tell the assembled group of Corporal Patrick Gallagher and his courage and how we there present should try and hold ourselves to his standard. Patrick was an American hero and an Irish hero. Pauline told me that her mother lamented that Patrick would be forgotten. No, Mrs. Gallagher, Patrick will never be forgotten. And the naming of an American fighting ship, an Aegis-class destroyer, the USS Patrick Gallagher, will ensure that he will never be forgotten. And I will never forget him. Thank you.